Hello and welcome to another episode of Quarantine with Fulbrighters, where we get some of the greatest minds in this country and we talk about what they're doing and what they've done. And I'm not sure how much of it we can get through because you've done so much, Mr. Mohsen Ali. Our guest for today is the assistant professor at Information Technology University Lahore. He's co-founded the Intelligent Machines Lab over there, and he has a PhD from University of Gainesville, Florida. How are you doing, sir?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
Great, sir. So let's just jump into your latest accomplishment out of the list of accomplishments. And truly, you're a treasure. And I'm so glad to talk to people like you and know that people like you exist in the work that you do in Pakistan. So, first of all, congratulations on the Google Research Scholar Award. Can we
Thank
announce
you.
how much? Can we tell people how much it is?
Yeah. It's about 60K.
Dollars.
It's a reasonable amount. Yeah, 60K dollars, $1,000. Yes, $60,000. Yes, it
So,
is.
sir,
And yeah, please.
can we talk about that proposal? Is economics from a far domain
Yes,
generalizable?
yes. So so the title of the so before I do, I can take a multiple steps there. So let me take a different step. So what happens is that detailed and accurate surveys are extremely necessary whenever we're making some kind of a public policy or we're designing some kind of planning for the area. We're planning certain kind of a development for the area. We need detailed and accurate surveys. However, those surveys more normally are very costly and they are spatially and temporally extremely sparse. So that we have a huge amount of missing data. To replace that missing data, machine learning and satellite imagery analysis is being performed. Um, However, these algorithms, they don't adopt from one area to another one. So for example, if I design something from Africa, it will not work in Pakistan. And secondly, they're not interpretable. So that if I give some numbers to the economists, they will not know from where these numbers came from. Like machine learning is predicting something, but why it is predicting that, what it is predicting. So our proposal is about, is economics from a far domain generalizable or not? This is our topic, and I'm PI, and my co-PI is Dr. Isa Aftab. She's also a Fulbrighter, and she's from the economics department. And so we combine together the forces to solve a multi-domain problem. And it's a very challenging problem, but very interesting problem. It has a flavor of social science, economics, and even in terms of machine learning, it has a flavor of domain generalization, domain adaptation, interpretability, all the hot questions right now in machine learning. And definitely we're going to use this thing for satellite imagery. We're going to take the data that is coming from multi-modalities and let's see what we can do with it.
With your powers combined, we are domain generalizable. Hopefully there's something great comes out of it. But for people like me who
Sure.
have no idea what it is, I was just reading a brief about what you had written. You were making an analogy about how somebody who drives in California and when they
Yeah.
come to Karachi. So for people who might still be a
Yeah.
little confused about what exactly it is,
Yeah.
can you
Yeah.
explain it in terms that
Yeah.
somebody
Sure.
like me would understand?
Sure. Sure. So let me take even a bit step behind. Let me take a big step behind and see. We all right now, if you talk to anyone, they will be talking about how AI is revolutionizing everything. Like
Artificial intelligence.
artificial intelligence revolutionize everything. You will people use the names AI, machine learning. I mean, they are slightly less of machine learning, the subcomponent of an AI, and then they use something new right now, very popular name, deep learning. Deep learning is an even smaller component of machine learning, but for general population, I'm going to use just AI.
What
So
is
we
deep
all
learning? If you can just
so
explain.
deep learning is a deep learning is a small not a small, I should not say use the word small, but it's a sub part of a machine learning. And what we do is that we instead of handcrafting the representations, we try to learn the hierarchical representations. For example, if you go back 10 years, if you go 10 years back, most of the computer vision problems would be that someone will come and say, okay, if I want to find for example, if I want to find uh, if I want to find humans or cars in an image, let me design some features. For example, let me say that cars have a certain shape. Let me try to capture those shapes using the edges, and let's combine different parts information together to create. That's how the car would look like. And over that, we will have some statistical model to, so we have spotted machine, we have certain other, or even a network, we can have that, and it's going to detect or classify the image. This was the same with many other machine learning problems, regardless whether they were coming from a text or they were coming from a vision. However, parallel to this activity going around, there were people who were working on, who were claiming that handcrafted features is not a right way to solve a machine learning problem. A better way to do that would be let machines find out what kind of representation they need to solve the problem. And in that, there was a strategy that is called hierarchical representation learning. That we can have a representation which depends upon other representations. So, for example, for example, I can take an image, and on that image, I can find the corners. I can attach the corners to create lines. I can I can combine the lines to create a rectangle. I can combine the lines to create a piecewise curve. And might be, if I combine certain rectangles, certain triangles, and certain circles, I might get car. But if I combine if I combine certain rectangles and certain circles, I might get bicycle. So a representation, so there's a higher level representation and there's a lower level representation. There's a hierarchy in those representation. And higher level representation can use parts of lower representation which are being used by others. For example, when we look at the car and we look at the cycle, we see that both have tires. They have a different meaning, but they have tires in them. So this is something which is common in between them. If you go lower than that, we can see the truck and the car might have a similar window shape thing. So there's a shared representation. And we try to capture that representation in lower forms. And as we go more on the semantic side, we get more higher level features. This is called hierarchical representation. So in lower, for example, if for example, letters could be lower representation, middle representation could be words, a sentence itself could be a higher representation, for example. And so these are the people who are thinking about doing this hierarchical representation learning. And in 2010 to 2012, we finally saw this thing conquer everything. So people were getting success in before 2010, but 2012 was the ones they just hit everyone very powerfully with their results on a huge amount of data set called ImageNet. So Hinton was one of the authors there, and it was just impressive what deep learning can do by just providing computational space and large data sets. Now, this is very important to remember that they require a huge amount of computation. They require a huge amount of data sets. Now, all this AI revolution is very exciting. Why? Because recently we saw AI fold the proteins. We saw AI help drive cars, autonomous vehicles. We're looking at opportunities where AI can help us discover medicines. So we're seeing every part of our life is being impacted by AI, and we are very excited about this. It's a huge excitement in the field that what we can do. I mean, in 6, 7 years, 8 years of deep learning, we have been able to do so much. How much practical more thing we can do? We can generate images. We can generate a text. We can have boards like structures which seemingly look like human produced multimedia content. So, however, we need to see is this thing is that with this success, there's a community, there's a large set of community which is not getting the benefits of this success. And the reason is majorly because those communities, those nations, and even the minorities in a bigger countries, their culture, their language is not producing digital content enough to be able to train these data hungry algorithms. Now, there are two portions. There are two portions of this bias. Many people believe, and I am also the one, that one of the biases because how the algorithms are being designed, and the other bias is because of the data. So in countries like Pakistan and many other countries, we do not have enough data that even if we have machine learning algorithm, we can use that data to get the benefit out of it. So I my my I want to overcome this challenge,
Mm.
and I want to overcome this challenge in twofold. So my research is trying to make algorithms less data hungry, number one. Number two, developing the tools such that they could be used by the communities and the people to generate more data. Okay, so on one step, I want to make the algorithms to be that they could be able to be trained or to move from one domain to another one
Mm.
without using much of the labeled data. So my direction is self-supervised learning, unsupervised learning, domain rotation, domain generalization. So this is strategy I'm taking right now. And other strategy is to create the tools such that we can bring these large data sets in a public domain. So for example, we are right now collecting a huge amount of data set for Urdu caption generation.
Nice.
We are looking towards how to get the closed captioning for Urdu. We're looking in that direction. And sorry, yeah,
So when
question.
I open 40 tabs and Google asks me if I'm human and I need to show where the three cars are, you're saying Google is too far back.
Oh
The
yes.
know where the cars are now.
So Google knows, but Google doesn't. So this comes. This is the problem you're saying, is that where these kind of tools are being used to collect the data, because even with
Ah.
even with all the success, machines are not able to work everywhere. So now the question we started from, where we jumped, and
So
was
so
domain
when they
adaptation.
ask me to show them where the car is, they're using that to learn from me.
Yes, they are using that to learn
Oh,
from
they've
you.
been
They're
harvesting my
using.
knowledge. I had no idea.
Oh yes, I mean nothing is free. Nothing is free. We are contributing in by sharing the knowledge, by sharing the expertise. So what domain adaptation we started from was this one, is that, so suppose that you train in a vehicle to drive in California, and suppose that you become happy on Thanksgiving and you want to drive from California to New York. So over the way, the traffic is going to change, train is going to change, weather is going to change, and the roads might change, their widths might change, even the vehicles might change. So when this change will come, the machine learning algorithms will fail, but you might succeed. Like for
Mm.
example, if you drive in Islamabad and come back to Lahore and go to Mazang, go to old city, you might have a challenge in driving a car, but you will drive it, unless, I mean, but you'll be able to train yourself to drive in those environments. Computers cannot do that. Computers, if this, I mean, we are trying to design algorithms such that without providing them a labeled data set, we can allow them to be adopt to the new environment. So even if they're trained in Lahore, and I'm trying to drive to London, and all the frame through from Kabul to Istanbul to the London, my vehicle can adopt to the new rules. And we as a humans look at semantic and syntactic information, context information, and use that information to retrain ourselves to work in a new environment. And this is something we're trying to do with the computers too. That this is called domain adaptation. Algorithm trained on one domain should be able to work in another domain. For example, it could that you learn to drive in daylight, but you're able to drive in night also. So this is a challenging domain for the computers, and we are trying to make them domain adaptable.
That's brilliant. As a podcaster myself, my point of reference when you were talking about it was Joe Rogan does the most popular podcast in the world. So they've managed to create a deep fake, which they can get Joe Rogan to say anything. The reason they could do that was because they had hours and hours and hours of data. So if he has 1,000 episodes, which are a couple of hours each, they have 2,000 hours of data. So they can
Yeah.
create a deep fake of Joe Rogan much easier, as opposed to if
Yes.
I had done 100 podcasts in Urdu, they wouldn't have enough data to create a fake Urdu podcast of me.
Yes, yes. This cuts in two ways. Number one, if you don't produce enough data. So many people talk about how AI is electricity, how AI is the next fossil fuel. I like the AI being new electricity a lot, because this means that your life is going to change and dependent upon this new electricity. So if your machines were not working on the same voltage as the electricity being used, your
Mm.
machines are useless. So you need to change. So for example, if you're, for example, if you are dependent upon on your transcriber to take the notes, and suddenly this English transcriber becomes freely available. So everyone starts using this automatic transcriber. So this means that they don't need human transcribers. This means that the budget for the human transcribers will be gone. However, in Urdu, we will not have a good transcribers to good tools to automatically transcribe whatever we're saying. This means that either as a culture, we need to shift to another language which has a transcriber. Okay, and this means that we either have or not use the benefits of that automatic transcriber. So either we have to shift the culture, change the language, or don't get the benefit from the AI tool itself. So for example, AI tool helps you detect the medicines which is specific to certain race. If you want to use that in Pakistan and everywhere, we need to have a data so that we can train it. We need to, or at least at the minimum, able to detect whether changing this kind of having this change going to affect the quality of that AI algorithm or not. So having a huge amount of data is one thing. Having it labeled is another problem. So we have huge amount of data right now. You're producing huge amount of data. You can record it right now. What is the problem? Most of these algorithms are supervised algorithms. So most of these algorithms require that you give them images and then tell them what to look into these images. Give them a text, give them a sound, and tell them what to do with the sound. This is called labeling. So they have to be labeled so that we can do the task learning. Now, if the data, but huge amount of data is unsupervised. If we can design machine learning algorithms which can work unsupervised on the data which is not labeled, we would be doing a huge benefit, not only to the corporations, to the businesses, but to even to the people which do not produce a huge digital footprint. However, with that, we need to see if we can make them generalizable, so that if the data from one area could be generalizable to other area. If a podcast made by you, I can do the transcript. So my weird accent, it can take that accent and transcribe it. But it was trained on something on BBC videos. That would be great. That if we can achieve that, that would be great. Or we could adopt it from there to here in a supervised way. That also would be very, very interesting. So we are working on this in dataset side, on an algorithm side. And with that, we are working on the tools so that we can intelligently map Pakistan. And we're trying to use augmented reality. We can try to use a kind of a feedback loop where we can ask people to so they can submit the images of birds, and they can submit the images of different locations, and machine learning algorithm can sit inside and tag them and then show them results back again, so they can use this information. So we're trying to make the tools where we can collect the huge amount of data, and other step is to make algorithms more data efficient.
I think, would this be a fair way to explain it? Because right now there's a lot of interest in audio, and especially people in Pakistan and India have really struggled with these audio devices, because if it's Alexa, it will understand if I say, uh, can you measure it for me? If I say it in a certain accent, it'll get it. But because the data set doesn't exist, would you say that what the work that you're
Yes.
doing or want to do is, doesn't matter the accent? If you've taught the machine that measure means this, then that should be generalizable. However, if somebody even says Mayer, the machine should know.
So yes, right now we are moving in the direction where we can do the domain generalization. Domain generalization could be generalized. The features are more generalized level. However, right now my research is on adaptation. So adaptation is that it can learn from so for example, if I and you are having a conversation with Alexa, and it doesn't understand it initially, but it takes a lot of that data, but doesn't need the labeling of that, but slowly learns how to interpret our accent. So that is domain adaptation. It slowly moves from an American accent to the British one, or to the local Desi one. This is adaptation. It's adopting the new domain. If generalization would be that it does not require any training. The features in it are just enough to work in your accent, in my accent. They're accent generalizable.
Brilliant. I see why you might struggle with your projects in Pakistan if you're talking about AI making certain jobs redundant? I'm sure there are certain offices in Pakistan which do not entertain your ideas and proposals.
So in Pakistan, we are seeing, so there are many companies in Pakistan which are working on artificial intelligence. Many of them are working with the foreign clients, and many of them are working with the local clients. However, I think so. One of the reasons that we are not fully able to enjoy benefits of AI is because we have to design the protocols to collect the digital data, so that all of our data is digitizable, that we have to need to design the protocols so that noise could be removed. We need to collect the information which is shareable. We need to come up with policies such that we can digitally share it and withhold. And there are challenges. Privacy is the biggest issue. So saying that share the images. So we're sharing huge amount of data with Facebook and Google, but in one side of our corner of heart, we believe that they would be keeping our data private. And the benefits they give us, we feel that they're more than what we do if we don't be part of their community. This is not true when it comes to the people are not comfortable sharing those information with the government. And government is not comfortable, and government agencies might not feel comfortable sharing private information to the researchers or to the business developments. So this is something we as a society have to have a discussion. How much privacy we are willing to let go, and what could be protocols that could be introduced so that privacy could be taken care of.
Don't you think it's too late though? Because when the Snowden revelations came, and it did not create a dent, it did not matter almost. The companies went even further ahead, getting even more data. So do you think it's too late? We've just given up too much to these companies, and they already have everything. If I Google my location history on Google Maps, it'll tell me where I was standing at 6 p.m. 5 years ago.
This is very interesting thing is that and yes, by sharing them our information till now. For example, think about like I don't know how old you are. I was born in an era where
How old you?
you might be very young. I remember the era where there was a phone in one's phone in whole street, and then you have to like jing 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 jing, like dial it round around. And like there was used to be celebration when the phones would be installed in a house. Like generally people would feel happy. But there's a whole generation that has grown.
That is my generation, sir. I entered LUMS a year
Uh,
after you left it.
oh, okay,
So now you
okay.
can
Oh,
gauge how
you're right.
old I am.
Okay. So yeah. So see the thing. But interesting thing is, this data is reliable as much we provide it,
Yes.
and we as a human change behavior. So, unless these AIs are able to understand how the behavioral change comes, and they change themselves from the data that exists to something new, this means that if today we stop sharing the data, these algorithms would be on a back foot. But question is, the benefit they bring is extremely interesting. For example, Google Map, extremely important information. Understanding, for example, we are using the satellite imagery to understand where the buildings are. We did a project with UNDP to detect the slum areas that require satellite imagery, that require AI to identify those things. So we need to find a balance where a collective information could be used for the collective benefit, and where a private information should be put in kind of a lock and key. I believe the more we move in, the more we're going to use we're going to use the collective information. I mean, social networks are the collective information. For example, a simplest algorithm like the one that detects whether mail should be sent to you, or should be sent somewhere, sent to a trash or something, relies on understanding what are the malicious emails and what are not. So this means that it has to rely on the information which you might be feeling threat right now, but other people were threatened by it before. So we are relying on collective information. So it is our society we need to decide when to say that enough, we don't want to share any more than that. But this is something information we need to share.
So a decade ago, I think the entire discussion, and Obama also came out and said it was around metadata. What they insisted was we're just collecting metadata, we're just collecting metadata, which was in retrospect a misnomer. They're not just collecting metadata. They have all the data. They can locate anything at any point if they wish to.
Here's a very interesting part is who and like who can do that. So we know that on Facebook, when I post my image, when I post images of my kids and post images of I'm mostly tagging the location. Also, I'm telling at 10 o'clock I was having a breakfast somewhere here and here. I am giving them total information, and they are using this information. They are using the information to tell me that I should have tried another restaurant next to that. I could have brought my kids here because that place. So it is providing me this information. So when we say who, then it means the government. And the thing is that government in Pakistan, we have our national ID cards. Those national ID cards have almost all the information government wants to have about us, except the communication we do with each other on phones and on emails. But those emails go through certain, for example, Google, they go through Gmails, or they go through Outlook, they go through other email servers. And those, as I said, those companies, we ask them to look at our email and tell us whether we should read it or not, like it should be important or not. We ask them to do that. They are giving us a product and we are using that product. So how can they make the product and how it can fit our needs if it's not trained on our data or tested on our own data. So this means that actually we are, even if we believe we're not doing this, we are giving them permission to use information to make algorithms that can benefit us. There are other networks which there are other email servers which are more privacy concerned. Yeah. We can use them, but they don't give us they might not give us all the shashkas or all the benefits.
It's also when the society moved, right? I think there was a lot of conversation around WhatsApp. Everybody's so embedded in WhatsApp that despite the privacy concerns and Signal and Telegram being all the rage for a week or two, nobody stopped using WhatsApp.
No, nobody stops using in WhatsApp in the communities which we might know. I know many people who stopped using the WhatsApp and they moved to, I know people who stopped using Facebook. I know people who stopped using other social networks and they moved to much more secure ones. Thing is that we're using WhatsApp to connect with the people. Yes. Now, if I don't have people on the other side whom I will connect, this means that those platforms might not be usable. So this means that we need to design, and now that's where the society and the government comes in, that where it steps in and says that, okay, since this is a need of the society, this is something which everyone is going to be using, these are the safeguards which we need to install. These are safeguards which we need to add. The problem is this: when we ask government to do that, then this means that we're relying on government to decide what information is needed and what information is not needed. Now, again,
so in practice, isn't it actually the opposite? Whereas in America, the struggle that they're facing is Apple is not handing over some data. Apple is not giving a backdoor entry to the government, and the government actually wants more of it. So rather than the government looking to put up rail guards and protect citizens, it's actually the private company that's protecting the data, whereas the government wants more of it.
But we also have a case where someone were able to extract the information and try to influence the elections. I think so. Cambridge was the name of the company or something. Analytica. So again, now this means that this means is that sometimes some people believe that government being responsible for the nation should have access to certain amount of data. But we as a believe we believe that government should not have access to this data. But for example, Apple can always use this thing to do something else on it. So again, here, if the societies become more vigilant and becomes more concerned, they can change the behavior, because governments are what? Governments are our representative. They might not be able to change them today, but like 10 years down, when people like you would be or people who are listening to this thing, who might be younger, they are in a position of power, but we have changed their behavior about how to look at the data. We will have a change in government. So to change the government, we need to change the people how to think about the data. We need to educate them. If we can do that, then slowly that behavior is going to be shown in the government's policies. And that that is not possible if you don't educate our and that is true for everything. If we don't change people, if we don't work with individuals, we will not be able to change the society. And if sizable society is not concerned about something, sizable one, not the majority, sizable one, then we will not be able to change the government.
So you're
So
more hopeful about the future, and we've discussed our age. I feel like I am the anti-technology boomer here, and you're the hopeful youth who believes. I feel Ted Krasinski had a point. I'm actually quite wary of AI. So, for instance, even during COVID, the amount of tracking technology that exists, especially in countries like China, where your phone essentially became who you are, where you will be, how you will be able to get food. It's well and good when it's used to track COVID
yeah,
patients and stop pandemics. But
yeah,
tomorrow, if in private you have a dissenting voice against the government and then cops show up at your house,
yeah,
that's not great anymore. Is that
yeah.
worth me getting my groceries in 2 hours from Amazon to live in a world like that?
Yeah, so we can always see the thing again is that what do you do? What you right now is like trying to. So for example, I personally try to keep away from much of the sharing as I can, uh, but this is my personal decision. However, I also see the benefits of for example, and you will see this thing, and you might see this thing with for the families which are divided into many countries, that and friends which have never seen each other. Suddenly they are connected on the Facebook. Suddenly they are connected on the WhatsApp, and suddenly they're having conversations. Suddenly you're trying to understand, and this is bringing in much more understanding of the issues also, where it is keeping where all this is creating the havocs of fake news
Hmm.
and havocs of misinformation, and creating the bubbles of views, where only people in that view only listen to the views themselves. They hear them, their words resonating, and they feel that's a truth. The part of the truth is this also, that we have a technology where we can connect to the friend who might be sitting in a Peru or Bolivia or New York, and we can be hearing or Delhi, and we might be hearing his point of view or about certain things. I can tell you that many times my friends across the border, so certain times we connect with each other over saying, "Yeah, what is going on? Cure hai." And then we have this conversation, and we try to understand what is going around in terms of other person. This is also what is being provided here with the social network. So
Absolutely.
once this, sorry, please.
But do we have to take the good with the bad? So you said it's
No,
a choice. It's a choice. Let's assume it is actually a choice, because it's really not. For instance, in countries like Burma, where people are not informed, Facebook gives it to them for free, and then it potentially leads to a genocide over there. But even if we assume it is a choice, that in fact that is also a choice. We also see US cases where they found that the Samsung television was listening to you. Now
yeah.
in that case, it's absolutely not a choice, because nobody was aware that your television even had the capacity
Yeah.
to listen to you.
Yes. So this is so I will let me change this thing and say that in certain parts this is no more a choice.
Yes.
We are enrolled in a system where we need. So for example, One of the challenges when I came to Pakistan was that everyone was using a WhatsApp, and I didn't want to use that because I don't want to go on to one more social network, have it on my phone, and use it. I don't want to. However, I realized that much of the information is sometimes shared on the WhatsApp. So to be practical in this in the society I was in, I have to take up. So the certain choices are no more to the individual. That's where I fully believe we need to push the government to change the rules. So certain choices. So that's one of the, you highlighted it very well. The choices are made by individuals, but they become rules because, and that's the problem with the AI also, is that if everyone is using it, then you are forced to use it. Like if everyone is saying that we're going to be sharing the information when the schools are going to open, when his office is going to be open, I'm going to share when the boss is calling for the meeting, and I'm going to share when classes are going to be held on the WhatsApp, on Facebook, then this means that all the students, all the employees, all the people who want to contribute to the organization, regardless of whether it's government or non-government, will have to rely on the WhatsApp or on the Facebook or any other social
Yes.
network. This means that the CN power is taken away from the individual. However, if we can create a sizable community, sizable people who are wary of control or information being shared, or they want to put certain kind of constraints on it, then we can change the government. But we need to work with individuals and ask them to ask them to become concerned enough that we can petition government, we can talk to the government, or become so much energetic to create our own technology and say, this is the technology, and this is here, and this is something which can protect this thing for you. Okay, and then they are willing to go to the jail, or they are willing to be called to the court, or they're willing to be called to the higher presence. And then that is something else. But we need to work with the people to change their behavior, so that, and we need to, one thing more understand is that certain things are easy for you and me. We live in a society which is kind of monolithic, and 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 being to the certain race, being to the certain religion, being to certain way of having conversation, we come into the bracket which is not affected that much by the decisions, by these kind of a decisions, by release of a data or by leak of certain things, certain information, not extreme ones, but we kind of live in saying, we say, yeah, it's extremely beneficial. We need to start looking into the vulnerable people and try to adjust our behavior so that vulnerable people, vulnerable communities, they don't feel threatened. And this is the same problem with the AI. If we keep designing AI on the datasets which are biased, we keep designing AI algorithms which themselves are biased, which are created by the people who have a biased way of looking at the problem. If we keep designing AI algorithms which do not care for the long tail ones, we will keep missing people uh, that that actually really need the AI to work for them. So if we keep designing a very good medical doctor AI, and that doesn't work in the areas, regions of Pakistan and India and Bangladesh and Africa and the countries of Africa where we really need those algorithms to work, then we are actually leaving behind the people in the revolution who extremely need this revolution. And so we need to change, create more empathy in the people, more awareness that even when you're not feeling the pain, other people might be feeling the pain, and for them, we need to go and change our behavior. Privacy is extremely hot issue. Digital footprint is extremely one, because even if we have machine learning algorithms that that can, for example, do the closed captioning for your show, but for example, your show is not in Urdu. So this means that we will not generate enough data such that people can search this thing and say, Mohsen Ali ne kya kaha tha. We will not be able to search what did the Mohsen Ali said in Urdu or in Pashto or in Seraiki. So we have languages which are resource deficient. So we need algorithms that can work on those languages, so that we can bring in those communities that they're not forced to use English or other or data rich languages. And side by side, we need to create tools such that we can generate more data for those people, because eventually whatever the prediction they could do, they're going to do on the data. If
Yeah.
those people are not able to produce the data, they will not be able to get the benefit. Now, third thing comes in how to safeguard them, how to safeguard the data, how to understand that, for example, let's talk directly. We're talking about the governments. Let's talk directly. If your machine learning algorithm is giving a job on the basis of resumes it reads, and it reads all the resumes that come from the certain location or certain cities, and then it gets a resume from somewhere in somewhere not main city, there's a chance that it might be biased and it might reject a resume, even that person is extremely good. For example, I have read a case. I have actually seen the case where a resume was rejected just because it had 3 pages, and the HR was thinking that all the good resumes should have a 2. So it had a bias in it. But think about machine learning algorithm
Yes.
that takes 1,000 resumes and gives you 10 resumes. And for certain thing, it has a bias in it, cultural bias. Might have a racial bias. It might have all those biases, which it cannot even tell us. There's a different views of how to fight the bias. There are people who believe that this bias could be fought by the data. There are people who believe this is not the problem of just showing them enough examples. This is more systematic bias there, and it has to be handled in certain other ways. um, Sitting in Pakistan, I have a different view, of slightly different view of the thing. I fully believe them. I fully believe that what they're saying is that it's not just giving them more examples, more data, but I also believe is that as a society, we do not even produce enough data such
Mm.
that we can even verify if this algorithm is biased against us or not. So we need to produce, we need to have the tools to get more data. We need to build machines also, which is less data bias. Um,
It's such a great
so
articulation. I think when we think of AI and we think of computers, we think of them as blank screens. We think this is data, this is just math, without thinking that if the data is biased, the systematic racism, that without empathy, without conscious, when we think about these problems, we're going to come up with solutions which are not great. It's always a pleasure talking to Fulbrighters and seeing all the work that they do. You did your PhD in Gainesville and you were there for 7 years. How much
yeah.
of the person that you are today is because of all the alligators you ate when you were in
Well,
apparently a lot of alligator is quite a delicacy in Gainesville.
oh, I never tried the alligator. I never tried the alligator. Interesting thing is that when I was accepted to the Fulbright program, and I was chosen to be part of University of Florida Gainesville. Suddenly all these friends start sending me these articles where they will say that there's some alligators have eaten someone else and this and that. I said, oh my goodness, like please don't tell this thing to my mother. Like it would, I might not be able. So Gainesville is a very lovely town. I really enjoyed my life there. I really enjoyed my stay there. I really enjoyed the people there. It's kind of a,
It's a
it's a
university
university
town,
town.
right?
It's a university town. It's a multicultural, and you have people. For example, in our lab, they were like our lab consisted. It had people who were from India, who were from Bangladesh, who were from Taiwan, and we had Americans there also. We had so a wonderful thing about that was that I could be standing in a line in a Starbucks, and the person next to me might be a one working on astronomy, and
Mm.
other guy might be working on quantum theory, and barista might be taking the order, might be graduating in computer science. So it was lovely town where people from different backgrounds, different countries uh, were present, and there was I really enjoyed my stay there. I enjoyed the community there, both international and the local one, Muslim and non-Muslim one. I really enjoyed my stay there. International center was great. There was a Just to give you an example of some things which indirectly become really rememberable. So during Thanksgiving, being a university town where there are other benefits, one of them of not benefit is this, is that as soon as the vacations come, as soon as these holidays come, city becomes silent, empty. These roads are I mean, there would be roads where you could be walking without seeing anyone. There would be just wind and trees moving, stuff like that. And uh, so but our international in international center, there was a woman called Deborah Anderson. She used to invite all the international students to her house. And in one Thanksgiving, I remember there were 60 dishes. The
Wow.
potluck. There were 60 dishes. There were like 5 to 6 turkeys. Like one of them was halal turkey. The guy brought from Tampa or something. So like there was a huge amount of mixing of cultures, American, non-American coming on, and that's what the Fulbright brings in.
And
So
as cliched
Fulbright.
as it is, it's the Fulbright experience. It's everything that you learn. It's what you learn from other cultures. I've spoken to a lot of Pakistanis, especially people who work in hard sciences that they consider things like math and engineering. And very rarely do I see them talk about engineering with empathy, computer science with empathy, artificial intelligence with empathy. So it's such a pleasure to listen to you talk about it in these terms. How much of that was educated by everything that you learned at university during your Fulbright?
So I will say it was amplified there. I I need to give a huge benefit to my parents and to my teachers in Pakistan, who were able to instill these things in it. But see, these things become more apparent when
Mm,
you go in a culture where you're not where you're not from. So you can particularly see when you interact with other cultures, when you go and mingle with other ones. So that's where like Fulbright peep comes in, because you're sitting in a room with the Greek people, you're sitting in the room with other cultures, and they have a different view of looking at your religion, or they have a different view of looking at your country, and they have the questions which might be very pointing, and you might have questions which might be very pointing to their culture, why you do that, why you do this, why your people are doing this thing, why your country is doing this thing. And then once that curtain is broken, you understand that these people are like you. I mean, they want to do better in the world. They want to do better for the humanity. They want to do better for the country. They want to excel in their life. And this is the opportunity so all the organizations give you money to, whenever you get a funding, whenever you get a grant, whenever you uh, award, you take that money and go to the region of excellence and learn something there. Fulbright puts you in a community which which is diverse. So that's what the strength of the Fulbright comes in. It's not just the money that they give you to
mm.
go and study, and this is important, because if you don't give you money, how can you stay in good games? So it is important. However, the more important is that they build a system where you can have a conversation with other Fulbrighters, and this is kind of a kinship. You meet with other people who are not from your culture, not from your country, and you're forced to interact with them. You're given opportunity to interact with them. That shyness that breaks when that is where what Fulbright helps. That's where international centers in US helps a lot. So Fulbright gave me a great opportunity, and I think so. I don't know whether Senator Fulbright was thinking about was thinking in terms of only US and then building a understanding of US and other areas. An indirect consequence of Fulbright is this, that that people from other areas also understand each other.
Yes.
Indirectly, the building the indirectly. So I remember when Pakistan and India just were having well, we always have a bad time. So, but there was a case going around where like people were talking about get the military moving into each other, or airstrikes or certain things. And I was in US, and we were having this conversation in a room, and everyone is trying to keep uh, keep themselves calm. It's the emotional situation. And I remember, like, we started discussing where to live, and they realized that I live very near to the border. And suddenly, when you realize this thing, that this person lives in Delhi, somewhere here and here, this person lives in Mumbai, somewhere here and here, the guy lives in Istanbul here and here, this lives in Greece and here and here, this guy lives in Lahore, somewhere here and here. Suddenly, these are not places; they are people whose
People.
faces you can put mark to. And suddenly, when you talk about war or revenge or other things, suddenly their part of your heart starts to think about, well, yeah, this guy lives there, his family's from there. And suddenly that, I think that moment of reluctance to take a strong step is very important to keep a peace.
Beautiful.
And that leads to much other empathy.
Love, empathy, diversity, these are not just words, these are values. And if these values educate that the work that you do, we will hopefully build a better world. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today and sharing this
Thank you
wealth
very
of
much.
knowledge. I can literally talk to you for hours. Hopefully when we make another season we can have you back. So thank you
Sure.
so much, sir, for joining us, and
Thank
thank
you.
you everybody for listening. Take care. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye.